Good evening and welcome to FOSIL Education and School Libraries, where we're going to continue our conversation tonight about our very exciting project that is about to be launched. Um, 8th of February, we are doing our first or our inaugural FOSIL Symposium. And tonight, Darryl and I are just going to chat through it, try and excite you about it, and hopefully encourage you to sign up and join us. So good evening, Darryl. Thanks for joining me again.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi. So where are we at then? Tell me more.
What I was just thinking for this evening, because things have been so busy, uh, both with the start of term, but also with pulling various bits and pieces together for the symposium, that it's only now that I've begun to think about what I'm going to say. On the 8th, that I've really just taken a step back and reflected on just how special the program is in terms of the people who um, have agreed to share and what insights we're going to gain into their experience of inquiry. So I thought maybe this evening we could just step through each of the sessions briefly, and just give people an idea of who's going to be talking and what they might expect.
Yeah, sounds great. So where are we
Hmm.
going to start?
Well, so what I was actually looking at is something that I will mention on the 8th, is that looking back, the very earliest reference that I have to fossil is actually from 2010. Initially, I thought it was 2011, but that does actually then mean that the symposium marks 15 years of thoughtful
Wow.
development of fossil.
Yeah.
And actually, I was very, very surprised that it's 6 years of the FOSIL Group. Um, and then I think it's appropriate, seeing as you're going to be kicking things off, that we met at Oakham
We did.
for that IB workshop that I led in 2011,
Yeah.
which means you've been on this journey almost since the very beginning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was funny actually, Darryl, because when I think to that session I joined, it was 3 days, I think it was at Oakham.
Hmm.
And you were probably the first person that I had ever met that was supercharged about information literacy work, which is where we were at the beginning. And I just knew at that that as a school librarian or people who were supporting schools with a framework, how could we move forward? How could we expect any of the schools that we were working with to actually understand what they were supposed to be doing? And and I, when we've had a quite a journey, haven't we, since that first, because Fossil, it remind me, I don't think Fossil exist at that point? It didn't. Oh, it was the
Yes.
Open's information literacy framework, wasn't
Yes.
it? Yeah. So and you then changed. Oh, actually no, because I was then using Quicker.
Yes.
Which is funny because I couldn't use the Oakham framework. So we took the
Yes.
acronym from the cycle. So we were using Quicker, Connect, Wonder, Investigate, Construct, Express, and Reflect. Yes.
Mhm.
Um, so that is a long time then, Darryl, a long time to be.
Yes, and I think again, that was really interesting for me because uh, you know the whole point about fossil was that I was trying to understand how to teach certain skills, um, in looking for a framework of skills which I thought were information literacy skills.
Yeah.
I stumbled across Barbara's framework of skills, which then turned out to be an inquiry process that included information literacy skills. And it
Yeah.
was actually the fact that, I had called that framework for Oakham School information literacy because
Yeah.
that's what I thought it was, and that's how I was using it at Oakham. And the fact that you went away and had to change the name to Quicker, that actually um, caused me to take a step back from that and to think more carefully about what it was that I was doing, and how to increase the value of that for other people,
Yeah.
which then led to the change to framework of skills for inquiry learning, which is actually a more accurate description of what it was.
You're very welcome, Daryl. But it's interesting, isn't it? Our journey has been so varied, and we, we don't live in the same place. We did for a tiny little amount of time, but we don't live in the same place. And how, your connection with Barbara, other side of the world is we're able to navigate this and actually move forward. And it just fascinates me, the people that I've worked with that tell me that they're using FOSIL. So there's lots of people on the FOSIL forum that they're talking, they're discussing, and everything else. But then just a random conversation, and somebody will say to me, well, I'm using FOSIL. And it's like, it's just so widespread. It's a pleasure to be part of something that school librarians, teachers are hearing about, and it's such a simple but full framework that people can pick it up and begin to use it and make it effective for them. And that's the amazing thing about it. So it's something that you should be extremely proud of. And I am proud of being part of that journey with you. It's fascinating. So we're here now, how many, 15 years later? I think we had a conversation last year, didn't we, Daryl, where we said, oh, we should do something like this. And in my typical uh, buoyant, we've got to do it now kind of way, I think I announced it before we'd actually finalized it.
Yes, 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 you did.
But I think with all of these things, if you don't just go for it and do it, you never get it done. So yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
It's really, really, I'm really excited about what's coming up. Do you want to talk a little bit about who is joining us?
Yeah. So, I mean, actually, there are two things that immediately come out of what you've just said is the program is testimony to the fact that we are part of a community,
Yeah, absolutely.
and that we have extraordinary colleagues who've done extraordinary work way before we even started on this journey.
Absolutely.
And I'm so pleased that some of those colleagues are going to be joining us, which leads me into the second thing, is just to say that everybody who is speaking on Saturday the 8th, they're all joining us live for their sessions.
Yeah.
So, for example, Diane and Jennifer, who are joining us from Canada at 1:45 a.m.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
that's commitment.
yes, and it's commitment to the work, but it's also commitment to the people who are doing that work.
Yeah,
So it really is a great honor, I think, for us and for those of us who are going to be joining either live or through the recording. Yeah, it's a great honor to be working together towards something that really matters, both to us, but also for the children that we teach.
absolutely.
So, I mean, that's entirely appropriate then to start off with Diane and Jennifer. So, I've just got a bit to say about them because I think they are bringing so much to the opening of the symposium. So I met Diane and Jennifer at the IASL 2019 conference in Dubrovnik, where I had been asked to deliver a keynote presentation, which was titled Between the Classroom and the Library. So you may notice a recurring theme in many of the things that I talk about. But really, that has been it from the beginning, is collaboration between classroom-based teachers and library-based teachers. And that invitation came out of the IFLA 2019 World Library and Information Congress in Athens. So I attended that. I was representing SILIP SLG, and met some extraordinary colleagues there. That led to the invitation to the keynote, and that was really where I met Diane and Jennifer. I then discovered that Diane and Jennifer had been instrumental in developing the deeply thoughtful Alberta inquiry model, as part of Focus on Inquiry, a teacher's guide to implementing inquiry-based learning. And that then, that generosity of spirit, you and I hosted an extended discussion of this enormously helpful document during October, November, and December of 2019. And that culminated in an online Q&A with Diane and Jennifer in January of 2020. So all of the stuff that I've written, that I'm talking about now, I've written up with links. I had hoped to have that finished before we spoke this evening. I'm almost there. But when I post the recording of this in the FOSIL Group forum, I will also include this text with the links so that people can follow up if they're interested.
Great.
Because there is a topic in the FOSIL Group forum on focus on inquiry, which lays the groundwork for the discussion that we had. And then there are links there to your record of the discussions, as well as the recording of the webinar.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was you know, a lot of people took part, you know, engaged. I remember it being a really special thing to do, in the fact that, you know, we did manage to get Jennifer and Diana to join us and to talk it through. It was amazing, really good.
And also maybe just there to remind people, I mean, it is in the program, but just to remind people that both Diane and Jennifer, I mean, Jennifer is still the Faculty of Elementary Education at the University of Alberta, and Diane is Professor Emerita. So just to remind people that, you know, in countries like Canada, in order to be a school librarian, you have to be a professionally qualified teacher.
Right.
So a librarian in those countries is a teacher who has specialized as a school librarian. And they were enormously influential in the training of teachers, or the education of teachers for school librarianship. Which is why that document is called Focus on Inquiry, a Teacher's Guide to Implementing Inquiry-Based Learning. And I think for us, that was a real insight into a view of the relationship between school librarians and teachers, that maybe for many of us was just something we'd never encountered before.
No, yeah, exactly. No,
So
so to hear them again is going to be amazing.
yes, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And also just to mention that Diane, she authored one of the epistemology and learning memos. So she actually contributed one called Focus on Inquiry, Reflections on Developing a Model of Inquiry, which gives real insight into the thought and work that went into that, which is quite startling.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking quickly while I do that, I mustn't forget something at the end here. Pairing right up until the very end.
We're not
Yes.
doing this ad hoc at all, are we, Darryl?
No. So yes, then there are two other things that are really significant for us is that Diane was co-editor with Barbara Schultz-Jones of the IFLA School Library Guidelines,
Yeah,
which have been enormously influential and
huge.
helpful to us.
Yeah.
Which they then followed with Global Action on School Library Guidelines in 2015, and then Global Action on School Library Education and Training in 2019. And those two books are part of the IFLA de Gruyter Publications series, and they drew contributions from all around the world.
Right.
Firstly, on the guidelines
Yeah.
from different countries' perspectives, but then in the second publication on how implementation of what was always meant to be inspirational and aspirational guidelines was going practically.
Yeah.
And then lastly, which again is significant for us, is that also in that series, Diane and Barbara co-edited Global Action for School Libraries Models of Inquiry in 2022. And 3 of the 5 models included in that book are Stripling's Model of Inquiry, which we'll talk about a little bit later, FOSIL, and the Alberta Inquiry Model.
Yeah.
And that book also included a chapter by Joseph Sanders and Jenny Tureen on deep collaboration by teacher and librarian to develop an inquiry mindset using FOSIL. And there is a link there to the discussion that they had at the IFLA mid-year meeting that we hosted at Blanchland College. So they discussed their collaboration on that chapter.
Yeah,
So
they
there's a
did.
video of that as well as the accompanying PowerPoint presentation, which is very, very interesting.
Yeah. So many amazing people sharing so much
Yeah.
and giving so much time we are extremely grateful.
Yeah.
And that's not all.
Oh.
What else have we?
So now this is so we've just gone from the crack of dawn. Well, the dawn hasn't even cracked yet in Canada.
Yeah.
And the sun, I think, will already have set in Australia
Yeah.
when we're joined by Lee and Joe. So our relationship with Lee stretches back at least as far as 2021, when the two of us wrote an article called FOSIL Inquiry as Mindset, Skill Set, Tool Set, and Community,
Yeah.
or Lee as editor of Access, which is the national journey of the Australian School Library Association.
Yeah.
Just to mention again that, like Canada, school librarians in Australia are called teacher librarians. And that again is because you have to be a teacher in order to be able to specialize as a school librarian.
Yeah.
So since then, I've developed a close working relationship with Lee and have since written 6 more articles for Access. And very excitingly, the last 2 written with Lee, called Rediscovering the Promise of Freedom Through Inquiry. So I've got links to those 2 articles there because they were particularly interesting, because the first article was written specifically for principals, senior leadership team, and classroom-based teachers.
Yeah.
With the second article then being focused specifically on teacher librarians. So then on top of that, Lee is now also an adjunct lecturer on the Master of Education Teacher Librarianship course at Charles Sturt University. But she was previously head of service at Loreto Kirribilli in Sydney, an independent Catholic school for girls from kindergarten to grade 12. So basically was is nursery through to year 13, K
Yeah.
to 12. Lee oversaw an outstanding inquiry program and has remained in contact with Joe, who is the history coordinator, particularly around the superb grade 11 ancient history inquiry. Lee and Joe, now this is what is really interesting and what I'm particularly excited about, is that they have enormous experience of guided inquiry design. And Jenny and I worked with them to reframe this inquiry through FOSIL.
Wow.
So I'm very excited about what they will be sharing about this extraordinary insight that they've got into inquiry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, that is going to provide us with great experiential insight into inquiry in a very different context to what many of us are familiar with.
It's providing a learning opportunity for everybody, isn't it? In all different contexts. So yeah, amazing that they're.
And again, I think even though the specific focus is that grade 11 ancient history inquiry, but the context is much, much broader.
Yeah,
And the experience is much, much broader.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we've just passed dawn.
Okay, well then, yeah, then we're in Guernsey at Blancheland College, which is an independent Catholic school for boys and girls from PK to 12.
Yeah.
Now, while on the day, we won't be talking about our inquiry program because our focus is on the very exciting development of the Institute for the Advancement of Inquiry, which I'm not going to share anything about until the day.
Yeah. Watch this space.
Absolutely. So even though we're not going to talk about our inquiry program, we have established signature work inquiries in all phases of the college, which are the backbone for other inquiry-based work across phases and academic disciplines or subjects. And we reflect on them as often as possible in the FOSIL Group forum, specifically in inquiry and resource design. So for colleagues who are joining with a primary school focus, and I know that there are a number of colleagues who have signed up with that focus,
Yeah.
there are some very detailed discussions and examples in the forum from inquiry in primary school.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing about FOSIL is that it's like we might be talking about year sevens, we might be talking about year 12s, but actually the reality is that there is something for everybody, and
Absolutely.
inquiry starts the day children walk in that school door, and should continue all the way up until they leave. A- and recognizing and understanding what is going on in year 12 for a reception teacher or a year 4 teacher is really important, because it helps them understand what foundations they're providing in order for those year 12 students to do the inquiry that they're going to be doing in year 12. So
Yeah.
really it is important that we know beyond the year group that you're teaching what's going on above, but it's also important that you know what's going on below. And I think that is something that's going to come through in the symposium quite strongly, I think.
Yep. So then we move across to Dubai,
We do.
and we're joined by Mary Rose Grieve from Heartland International School, which is an independent school for boys and girls from PK to 12. So again, a through school, which interestingly offers a British education through the National Curriculum for England. Now, the greatest compliment that I can pay to Mary Rose is that I honestly cannot remember the circumstances in which we first met, except that, like you, it feels like she has been part of our journey pretty much from the beginning. And she, the two things just to mention about that session is one of the things that I really admire about Mary Rose is that she is very, very passionate about inquiry and very uncompromising about the need to develop our students as engaged and empowered inquirers. But she has a very, very, very strong sense of the role of reading in that,
Yeah.
not just nonfiction, but also fiction.
Yeah.
And her knowledge of fiction and nonfiction is truly extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I wish that I had that kind of knowledge of uh, books and texts that, both in terms of fiction and nonfiction, uh, nurture, stimulate, and support an inquiry stance and process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I met Mary Rose for the first time when she joined possibly some of my training back during COVID, I think. But I might have even known her before that because I was doing Twitter chats and all sorts of things that I think she might have jumped on. Um, yeah, I wonder if she remembers. We'll have to ask her when we speak to her
Yes.
next.
Yes. So again, yeah, I think there is somebody who has a real sense of the importance and value, uh,
Mm,
and has her finger in many different
she
pies.
does. She
So she
does.
brings a really wide perspective,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and am very much looking forward to yeah, what specific aspect of the challenges and opportunities facing us she's going to focus on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's always something to be taken away from a Mary Rose talk.
Definitely, definitely.
And then who? Then who? We're
Well, so
back to the
what I'll
UK,
do
aren't we?
is we've then got Ruth Maloney and Janeth. I think her surname is pronounced Karnom.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just briefly say something about their schools. But because you have a close working relationship with them, maybe you could just share a little bit about their particular journeys and what they might bring
Yeah.
on
Happy to.
Saturday. So Ruth is at Tunbridge Grammar School in Tunbridge, England, UK, which is a selective grammar school with academy status, educating girls between the ages of 11 and 16. So that's grades 6 to 10. And then girls and boys in the sixth form, which is grades 11 to 12. Now, interestingly, of all of the schools who are talking or will be represented, Ruth's school is the only school offering the IB middle years program in grades 6 to 8. They then do GCSE exams, so public exams in grades 9 and 10, and then do the IB diploma program in grades 11 and 12.
Yeah.
Now, that is a very, very interesting setup with some very specific challenges,
Absolutely.
which is really the context in which I got to know Ruth, because that is a similar setup to what we had at Oakham School, where I first formally developed FOSIL before we left. So we used to offer the IB diploma program alongside A levels. And by the time we left, they had introduced the 3-year MYP like Tunbridge, followed by the 2 years of the public GCSE exam.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I experienced at Oakham, which Ruth has raised in discussions that we've had before is that even if you're in an IB school, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that all colleagues have an IB stance.
No.
And fully embrace an inquiry process. So the GCSEs do present a very particular challenge. Now, all of the other schools are offering GCSE and A level.
Yeah.
And I think why I'm highlighting that is because I think there is a misconception that you can only do inquiry in an IB school, and if you're not in an IB school, you can't do inquiry. Whereas clearly, the majority of the schools who are represented during the forum are doing so in a GCSE and A-level context.
Absolutely.
So that is the same with Janeth, who's at Connaught School for Girls in London, England, UK, which is a state-funded independent academy for girls between the ages of 11 and 16, which is grades 6 to 10.
Yeah. So I met them both through my training. If I talk first, because I've known Ruth the longest, Ruth has always has been interested in inquiry and particularly in FOSIL and how it could work. She's done a huge amount of work, which she will talk a bit more about in her session, on trying to embed it within the curriculum. I was offering last year, and I am this year as well, but the last year I was offering a masterclass on trying to get a project up and running. And Ruth was my guinea pig and she worked through it with me and has ended up with a really well thought through project that she actually, again, I think is what she's going to talk about at the symposium. She just brings so much thought to a project that I've had the privilege to join her in that journey, which is something that I find that when you do training, you dip in of someone's life and you dip back out again, and you lead them to it. Whereas running through the project with her, there was a real element of reflection at the end when she actually managed to try it out and see what happened and understand the pros and cons of it all. Ruth has also been involved heavily in my podcasts, really supportive in anything to do with school libraries and how to move them forward. So I think she will bring a very mature understanding of how it is within a school library, when although IB makes it the perfect place for inquiry to exist, it doesn't always. And I personally am really looking forward to hearing what she has to say. Yaneth, I haven't known quite as long, but she too joined my masterclass in the second session, the second time I did it last year. She was trying to introduce inquiry-based learning skills in year 7, 8, and 9. And that's what I hope that she's going to be able to bring to her talk. She is also doing teacher training. So she's got that element of understanding that the wider element of teaching is important, particularly for her and her school. And it seems to be integrating herself into the structure of the school in a way that I very rarely see, to be honest, for school librarians. And I just am really excited to hear her talk too. It's been lovely to watch these two women grow in understanding. And the joy for me is the fact that in asking questions and challenging me, I learn more too. So it's a real journey for everybody, and I think you say this regularly, Daryl, that it hasn't, we're not ever going to really get to a stage where this is it. We've done it, we've achieved, because inquiry and learning and thinking and all of this has to continue, and we have to keep learning. So, we're all on this journey, which is really exciting for me, I think, as well.
And certainly, again, just to mention for people that both Ruth and Janeth have made deeply thoughtful and inspirational posts
Yeah, they have. Yeah.
in the FOSIL Group forum. So again, it's definitely worth having a look and a scratch around.
I think
Just
what I would like to say about the Fossil Forum is that I think people are very reticent about not wanting to make themselves look silly. And we haven't all got the answers. And by posting your thoughts on a project or a question that you have is really important, because you won't be the only person that's thinking that. Other people will have exactly the same questions. And it's really important that these discussions actually happen, because, reading Yaneth and Ruth's posts just make me realize that actually there are things that I've not even thought about. And okay, I'm not working in practice in a school anymore, but I am working with school librarians, which can then be shared. So I benefit by understanding the challenges and the processes that they're going through. So, you know, it really is important that if you are one of those librarians who are using FOSIL that we actually don't know about, then get yourself on the FOSIL forum and actually share what you're doing, because that's really beneficial to all and to yourself, because you'll get some amazing answers back from people who are also using it, which is the purpose of all of this, isn't it?
yeah, and of course, also just to encourage colleagues there, because we're all busy.
Yeah,
So, we have to decide what we spend time on.
absolutely.
But both Jenny and I deeply value the effort that we've made to reflect on what we're doing in the forum, because what we've ended up with is a public-facing portfolio, public portfolio of reflective practice that has both improved what we're doing, but also is publicly available and a testimony to what we've done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I would encourage maybe for people who are in two minds, it does require discipline, but that discipline has absolutely been worth it in so many different ways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then once we've moved on from,
So we've got we're in the final stretch now. So this is going to, I'm very excited about this because David Harrow is headmaster at AKS Lytham, and he's being joined by Faye and Nick. So they are at AKS Lytham in Lytham St Anne's, which is also England in the UK, which is an independent school for boys and girls from PK to 12. Now, the interesting thing about David is that David was academic deputy head at Oakham School, and he was my line manager. So David was head of maths and then became academic deputy head. As a head of maths, he brings quite a unique perspective anyway,
yeah,
who is now head of a school. David was extremely supportive of my and our work on FOSIL at Oakham School. So he was a real champion of FOSIL and the library and the collaboration that the library brought to teaching and learning in the classroom. He was directly responsible for helping me to bring the FOSIL Group into being. And I think also what is going to be very interesting from his and their perspective is he was partly responsible for the introduction of the IB middle years program,
Okay.
which was introduced at Oakham before we left.
Okay.
So he really gets the importance and the value of inquiry on a very deep level.
So presumably he's taken it to his next school.
So now the interesting thing is that so their context is GCSE and A-level.
Okay.
I don't think that they would be in a position to introduce the MYP and or the DP.
No.
So I don't think that is an option for them.
No.
And yet there is still a deep commitment to an inquiry stance and process.
Yeah.
So I've kind of been aware of developments there at a distance, but certainly in the first year that David was there, they produced an absolutely extraordinary document showcasing inquiry-based work that was celebrated at a public event. I was deeply, deeply impressed with the quality of the work that they done, but also the quality of the publication celebrating the students' work, as well as the event at which the students were celebrated as inquirers.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
So it can be done.
yes,
Even in a
yes.
GCSE A-level school. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
And
fine.
I think that is the story that is going to run all the way through the day. There is no perfect school. There is no perfect educational system. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is people who are convinced that education is about more than just memorizing and reproducing in tests.
Tests. Yeah. Yeah.
And we have to find people who are like-minded. We have to find allies. And then within the constraints that we have, we need to do what we can.
Yeah.
Um,
But then that's not all. We have one final guest, don't we?
yes.
Yeah. Tell us about
Um,
her.
yeah, and so this is very special. I mean, for a number of reasons. But firstly, I was startled and delighted to discover that Barbara shares a birthday with me.
Oh, there you go. I don't know whether I knew that.
Yeah. So anyway, that always makes me chuckle because I only found that out relatively recently. But Barbara has been a formative influence in my professional development since I first stumbled into school librarianship in 2003.
Yeah.
So in that year, Barbara co-edited a book called Curriculum Connections Through the Library in 2003,
Yeah.
which included a chapter on inquiry-based learning and introduced me to her model of the inquiry process, as well as her approach to teaching and learning. That book then led me to learning and libraries in an information age,
Yeah.
which she edited in 1999, and in which she noted the following: a primary emphasis on learning in school libraries represents a paradigm shift for our field, one that is not yet universally understood or effectively implemented. School librarians must step forward as instructional leaders in their schools to design library programs that help students learn important ideas in the curriculum and learn how to learn in an information age. And that identifies an abiding concern with a paradigm shift that we have not yet fully made
No.
25 years
Yeah.
later. And it's that concern that brings us together for the symposium,
Absolutely.
from so many different countries and so many different educational contexts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that is always clear when speaking to Barbara is, and that will be echoed from the very first talk in the morning by Diane and Jennifer, is that however tough it is for us, we do it because we are called to do it for the students we teach.
Yeah.
And also just to mention that Barbara did also write an epistemology and learning memo on the development of her model. Yeah, was included in Curriculum Connections through the library in 2003.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that will sandwich an absolutely extraordinary day of extraordinary contributions by extraordinary colleagues from around the world.
Absolutely. We are.
And,
We
and,
are.
and there
Go on.
are others. There are
There are
others.
others. We are so
We could
lucky.
have had a 2-day symposium
Yeah, that's for next time.
next
Um,
time.
yeah. So just quickly to say that if you haven't registered, I will post the link in the show notes below, or you can email me, or yeah, we'll find a way to let you find out where it is. Um, Register even if you can't make the whole day, because the link you'll get means that you can jump in and out of the program all day. And we will be posting recordings to anybody, sending out the recordings to anybody who signs up. So we do hope that this is the beginning of something extremely special. And you don't want to be the person that's missed out on the first one. So
And if I could just add to that, I hope it's already clear from Jennifer and Barbara's contribution, and the fact that Lee and Joe have experience of both guided inquiry design and FOSIL, that even though it's the FOSIL Symposium, our concern is broader than FOSIL with inquiry.
yeah,
And even though there will be a focus on FOSIL, that is not in any way limited to FOSIL, and anybody who has an interest in developing engaged and empowered inquirers is welcome.
absolutely. What a great way to finish. Thank you very much for chatting to me tonight, Daryl. Hopefully we've inspired a few more to sign up. Thank you all very much for listening.
Super.